added renters, which has been was a big tweak that I think we all felt passionate about. But I think it's like a lot of good things in life. It was a collaborative effort, and we all also specifically want to make sure that we don't go back to those bad old days where we weren't making our pension payments, we were underfunding the school funding formula. You know, the surplus the year before I got here was $410 million. The budget I submitted was just over $10 billion. We've seen the bad old days, and we don't want to go back. So, like everything else in life, a collaborative effort. Do you want to add anything to this, or Nick?
Sure. I mean, I think that the truth of the matter is the governor, as outlined and as the Senate President alluded to, affordability is at the center of every conversation we've had when we come together and talk about legislation, we talk about budgeting, we talk about seniors. So the idea came, Stay NJ, I guess, came from me, so I guess I'm responsible for that wacky number in the beginning. So, but the truth of the matter is look, we have demonstrated over the course of the last several years that when we put our shoulder to the wheel and commit to doing something, we get it done. Governor Murphy deserves an enormous amount of credit for that. Senate President deserves an enormous amount of credit for making sure that happens. I think there were people who were skeptical about whether we'd be able to make a $7 billion pension payment. We did. We put in more money than we ever have, and actually added a $500 million payment at one point in the middle. Same thing with education funding, S2. You know, that has continued to ramp up, and the payment's been made all of the time. As the governor pointed out, this is a matter of priorities. Keeping seniors in the state of New Jersey is a priority for all of us. And so we're going to make sure that we get it done. We work through it together and come to where I think is a terrific place that addresses the concerns, provides for long-term stability, and offers seniors a real opportunity.
Nick, come on in.
And so I'll just speak from a historic perspective because unfortunately I'm here the longest. And I can tell you that I've been here for the bad old days, and these days are better. There's a better attitude and a better way of thinking now than there was when I first got here, and the economy is just far better. Under the policies that have put in place in these past 6 years, New Jersey has grown. So we have the luxury of providing this long-asked-for property tax relief that we couldn't fathom to be able to do. And when we first started to bandy about this program, it looked like it was going to be really hard to get done. But when the three of us get together, there's obviously things that we can make happen. And so this is a very responsible way of taking the original legislation that the Speaker had introduced and making it work. And I'm really happy that the governor was able to make those numbers work, still provide a really fiscal responsible budget, and give people the number one thing they've been asking for all these years I've been here is help us with our property taxes. And that's what this does.
It goes up $250 this year and stays that way. It will stay at $250. Yeah, unless we decide to raise it somewhere in the future, but yeah.
So that's $700. Please.
You kind of alluded to this, but I just want to address the timing issue again a little more clearly. So the promises made today to cut property taxes in half for a lot of seniors, the payout in 2026 for the seniors who are sitting there now saying, I want my property taxes cut now. What's the explanation for making the promise today, delivering in 2026?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is we want to give ourselves, we're bulls on New Jersey. We want to give ourselves a couple more years to see the economy strengthen, and we have every reason to believe it will. Secondly, this is a complex program to put into place, and we're probably going to need to have a runway that's reasonable to make sure we do it right when we get there. And thirdly, acknowledging that we don't want that. If that senior's out there watching, we want to make sure they know we actually are giving you something immediately. If you're a homeowner or a renter and you make up to $150,000, you're getting an extra $250 this year, next year, and the year after.
Just a quick follow-up on that. The $250, was there any rationale behind that? So property taxes last year went up by $206. Were you trying to get out ahead of that? Or maybe did you figure out how much you wanted to spend and divide it by how many you thought were going to apply? Was there any...
You're giving us a lot of credit for the approach here. We just... Yeah, that's right. Renters are 1.5 times what they were getting before. We just felt like this is a good number that we could land on. Again, remember fiscal responsibility. we have to collectively deliver a budget by a week from Friday that we can hold up, and Liz and I can go to see the rating agencies and say, yeah, we delivered affordability. We also did it in a fiscally responsible way. Hey, Paul.
What year, it's 2028 before they get the full 50%, correct?
No. January 26.
27 or
26.
26? And what's the guarantee that whoever's governor in 2026 and whoever's in the legislature in 2026 is going to appropriate the amount that will be needed?
Well, at least I'll be governor for the fiscal year 26 budget, so I could count at least year one off of that. I assume these guys will be around, and I think this is going to be, Paul, wildly popular. And no matter what party you're in, no matter what your persuasion, it's going to be a hard thing to turn your back on.
Why not put it on the Constitution? Bob Off, the assemblyman, suggested putting this exact program on the ballot as a referendum, because right now in it says if it conflicts with education funding goes first, because it has no constitutional basis. Why not put it on the ballot?
I think, listen, let's get this thing off the ground. I like Bob. Bob's usually got some good ideas, but for now, we're doing it the way we're doing it.
And then,
Do you have any follow-up, Paul?
27. What guarantee do I have that?
Well, as I said a minute ago, first of all, my guess is these guys are on the scene, even beyond my time, number one. Number two, I think this will be wildly popular. I think you said this in your remarks. This has got a lot of support, not surprisingly, including across the aisle. So if something's set, listen, we don't have to make the full pension payment. We don't have to fully fund public education, but I think collectively what we'd try to do is draw a line under what we think is good behavior and never return back to those days when we weren't living up to our responsibilities. Tom, you had your hand.
Yeah, if the budget situation worsens as you press up, budget experts in both parties are warning that we're going to face a gap starting in 2025 pre-COVID. What's to protect us, especially given there will be different players conceivably?
Yeah. I spent literally 2 hours with former Secretary Bob Rubin, who I've known for 40 years this morning, wargaming the economy. I think there's a general consensus that the tough time is going to be sooner than later. There's an enormous amount of bullishness. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I think I can. We're bulls on the 3 to 5 year plus outlook for both the general economy and New Jersey's economy. We think we're going to be set up really well. You look at Nick and I were with Merck yesterday, for instance, 7,100 employees in Rahway, including taking from sites elsewhere in Jersey, but beyond that. It's part of the reason, Tom, we put out a $10 billion proposal in our surplus. We know we're going to have to eat into that if the economy softens, but we just don't see a systemic challenge that would eat into that to such an extent we couldn't afford to fund public education, pension payments, et cetera.
If you have to choose between full pension, education, and this, what do you think?
Well, I think the bill is pretty clear that we're obligating ourselves to fully fund education and the pension payment.
But it's not really a legal obligation, sort of a spiritual.
Yeah, I feel like it's actually education. We have to. Yeah, it's more than spiritual. It's a commitment. Charlie, yes. Is it? Did Paul give you this?
At least I'm happy. The cost, Treasury told me yesterday, is $1.3 billion once this is fully implemented.
I thought 1, 2, 3, but yeah, that sounds about right.
And the original that you had threatened a month ago to shut down government over was 1.7, according to the administration, 1.2, according to all estimates. So this sounds like still a substantial substantial cost that you're heaping on that you initially resisted. I wonder if you could talk about your evolution of thinking on that.
Yeah, so and I'll speak for myself in this case because I don't want to speak for the other guys, but I think they'll attest to this as well. We already had a shadow number in our pocket that we were playing with to add in for seniors. So you'd have to take the $1.2 billion and in terms of the delta and take that down by some amount, say a couple $100 million, a good couple $100 million. Secondly, it didn't include renters at first, and I think the three of us, when we really looked at it, we said, we got to include renters. So that persuaded me. There are caps, and the questions you just asked a minute ago, Tom, on, we are obligating ourselves to fund public education fully, pension payment fully, and to have a very significant surplus. And we wouldn't be doing that if we, A, weren't going to do it, number one, but number two, didn't believe we could do that and also do this program. And those
One of those that is on the chopping block. If times do not, if it's a tougher situation than we're expecting.
yeah,
This is the one of those four that's on the chopping block.
I would say we're committed and obligating all of those to get done. Charlie?
To that commitment and that obligation, would you rule out raising taxes to protect this program if in fact, the economy does dip and the revenues do shrink up?
Gentlemen, I think I could say definitively yes, we rule it out, because it's kind of crazy to raise taxes to deliver tax relief. Right?
One other thing about that, and this is a critique that came from the left, can you explain why wealthy homeowners at $500,000, I know, Governor, you were concerned about zillionaires, people with significant money, people of that means.
Do you mind answering this?
Why at 500,000? Wouldn't it, in theory, a lot of those people have the means, pay the taxes, and probably have the means to stay and not fly off to or resettle in
Yep.
South Carolina or Florida? And as part of that, isn't it kind of regressive? I mean, they're more likely, because they're high income, paying higher taxes, they're going to get the full benefit, whereas somebody like a middle class or lower middle class homeowner is going to get maybe a portion of it.
I'm going to ask Craig to answer this, but the data suggests actually, Charlie, that senior is also at risk of staying versus leaving. And we want, if they want to stay, we want to help them find a way to stay. And that's sort of at the core of this. But Craig, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, for a few things. One, everybody will get a half. That's the plan. The plan is whatever you're paying now, you get a half. So, but the reason for the $500,000 cap is we want to make sure every senior has the opportunity to stay. We want to capture as many seniors as we possibly can, and giving people who achieve a good salary and have the opportunity to stay. We want them to stay because, as I said in my comments, seniors contribute in ways that are really profoundly important to communities, right? They help build those communities. They volunteer. They care for their grandchildren. They care for their communities in a way that is, you don't pin a dollar amount on it, but it has a profoundly positive effect. And so having people who have the wherewithal to be able to stay here and be engaged and continue to contribute to the economy in a meaningful way is really an important idea. The other thing that I think is really important to know, Charlie, is that the fact that this is, while the discount will go, or the cut will go to the seniors, it's really about families looking forward. Like, how many families actually have to contribute to pay for their parents, right? Young families paying for their parents or their grandparents to be able to stay in their home. This will help alleviate that. The other thing is, when people are deciding where to stay when they retire, when they're in their mid-50s or something, and they're making their decision about how they feel about where they live. And, there's an AARP report that talks about, I think it's 70% of adults in New Jersey want to stay in their home, and they worry about their property taxes. So we'd like to change that thinking. That would make it transformative. If people start to think about New Jersey as a place where they can stay and continue to be involved with their family, their grandkids, the people that they're friends. So this is an opportunity by having that be an aspirational goal, because some of the folks we want people to continue to strive to be successful, as the governor had mentioned, as the Senate President talks about. So this is an opportunity to do that and to say to people, look, you're welcome. We want you to stay. We want you to stay.
If you're making $500,000 in income,
Yeah.
it's more likely you have the means to pay that property tax. You're not going to just leave Jersey because of your property tax. Maybe, but somebody who
Well, you may, but you also may decide that, you know what, New Jersey's a good deal, just like it's a good deal to raise a family here, just like it's a good deal to send my kids to public school in New Jersey rather than have to send them in private school if I'm living in some other state. It's a good deal to live in New Jersey because we have an incredible location. It's a good deal for a number of reasons. Why not make it a good deal for seniors as well?
Joey, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so two things. One,
Sorry.
as a part of the bill, or part of this deal, is to create a commission dealing with implementation. Can you maybe give some details about what that might look like? Then second thing, just a clarification on the renters part of this. I know that's been asked before, but, so there's the part of it that is $250 for 2023 to 2026 via Anchor. Is there some kind of more permanent, long-term renters part of this, or is that the one part of this deal? Is that the only part of the deal that has to do with renters?
So on the first point, your question is the commission?
Yeah.
Just, we think this is a complex proposal. We admit that. Would like to see this end up where you press one button and you get your rebate, you get your incentive. So it's going to take time for us. We can't turn on a dime tomorrow and do this. We have to get representatives from all three of our branches in a room and try to come up with the sort of battle plan, if you will. Yeah, there's a apportionment of how much each of us get to put on this, as we do on most commissions. And so there's really two reasons why we're not going to hit the switch tomorrow. We want to be able to leg into economic growth to make sure we're within our means, and two, this is complex. Your second one, where do we end up with renters? Do they stay at 700? I forget. They stay at 700.
So that's just, that will be increased to 700 perpetually now, and that is...
Correct. It's going to stay as the other elements of Anchor for the non-seniors will be that way as well. Do we have the ability at some point down the road, if we're minting money as a state, to revisit that? Absolutely, but that's what it's going to for now. Please.
The senior freeze was added as an amendment to your Kaufman bill. Is that proposal included in this deal then?
Senior freeze was added?
Yeah, you added an amendment to include the governor's proposal for an increase in senior freeze.
Oh, yes, I mean, that was part of, yeah, that was, well, we were in agreement on that to begin with, so that just would, for drafting purposes and for simplicity, we had to increase the income levels.
This is a good point. We already, I mentioned we had a shadow, to Tom's question, we had a shadow amount of money on our team that we were playing with for seniors. These guys did as well. We were coming at it from a different angle. But secondly, in the budget address that I had put forward, we had talked about raising eligibility levels on senior freeze, raising it on PAD for prescription drugs, Senior Gold, another program, raising eligibility. Well, we got to still get, I still have to pass the budget, I have to sign it, but yeah, well, ask us on the 30th. Mike.
Governor, will people have to apply, or will the benefits be automatic? And just to be clear, there will be a direct rebate, people will get a check, or is it a credit for your property tax?
Our hope is that it's automatic and it's a credit. That's the holy grail, and that's why this is not insignificantly complex. And that's what the commission, that's a big part of the commission's work. Nikita, how are you? Meaning? Well, the expectation, again, we're sitting on a pretty significant cushion, and even though revenues have softened somewhat, although the early days in June have gotten a little bit more stable, which is good, in line with our expectation. The expectation, and I think if you take any reasonable economic growth assumptions, particularly with a pretty big consensus that softness is going to be sooner than later, you can project responsibly to a fiscal, I won't be here for fiscal year 27 budget, but that will be we're going to have the means in order to do this when you add the cushion today with what we'll have then. And then that's a good point. Good point. We're going to do our best to lockbox some of the money in each of the next three budgets so that we're putting money aside tagged for this like we do with debt defeasance and repayment.
Right, let's say you get to 26, you have money in that lockbox is the plan then to just put in 700 million to get it full fund for that year and annually spend.
Yes, whatever the amount is. And the good news is next year is the last year on S2, the last climb. We have the rest of Anchor is stable, so non-senior. The pension payment, we've reached the summit, So it's a big number, but it stays there, plus or minus a reasonably modest amount of money. So we don't have a lot of climbs in term, you'll have Medicaid, which is sort of largely formulaic. You'll have things like that. But for the most part, we've climbed the mountains that we had to climb collectively over the past number of years. Dave?
Just one point of clarification, Governor. You want to, for the next 3 years coming, an extra 250, and that will be in the form of a check or a direct deposit.
Same as Anchor, yep.
And you want to have an automatic scenario for the homeowner where they get a credit on their.
That is the hope. That's why this commission,
Starting in 26.
starting in January of 26.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick, and then we got to jump here.
One of the issues on the hearing, the speaker's bill and the committee that came up was complexity of the programs that seniors
Mhm.
have currently. Do you feel like you're addressing that issue by going to the all-in application and the, just to give a direct credit?
We do.
Something that the AARP is calling for
Yep.
senior freeze. At the same time, you're creating an altogether new program that seniors are going to have to get used to
Yep.
hearing about and applying for. Could you just speak to that, trying to address that concern of complexity?
Yep.
And whether you think this has gotten addressed?
Yeah, so we've heard loud and clear. I'm on Ask the Governor twice a month, television or radio. We hear it on the street. These guys hear it. We hear it from our members. Too many programs. I know you're doing a lot for me, but boy, it's one from column A, one from column B. Can you somehow roll this up into one, the web, preferably you press a button and you get it. So that is, without question, the objective here. And I think we will need to, your second part of your question is a good one. We're going to need to make sure all of our seniors understand that as things get rolled up into a new umbrella, new brand, that they're getting a lot more than they would have gotten otherwise with programs that they admittedly like, but they feel like there are too many of them and they come at them from too many angles. Tom, real quick, yep.
I don't know if you saw the op-ed in Spotlight from Mark Pfeiffer and Andrew Sidemayer stuff, but they said maybe we could switch to a circuit breaker type of credit that just caps the percentage of income seniors have to pay, or homeowners. So you would say no more than 4% of your income or 8% of your income. Combine all these programs. So they said it would simplify things. Is that something you guys have thought about at all, or is it something that this commission could consider instead of
Yeah.
coordinated 5 programs?
I didn't see the op-ed, so forgive me on that one, so I don't want to get too specific with an answer. But we've kicked around a lot of different angles here. Is that fair to say, guys? And again, it's kind of an interesting, we each came to this saying, okay, we want to do something on the senior side of this, and we want to do it in a responsible way. I would say never, but we like where we've landed. On behalf of the Senate President and the Speaker, thank you all so much. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Likewise. I'll see you. I suspect we'll see a lot of each other. So Tish Coughlin, your wife, saw me yesterday. She said, I understand we're